This episode of The Modern Rogue brought to you by Roman.
Go to GetRoman.com/rogue and get free 2-day shipping, a free online consultation, and $15 off your first order of ED treatment.
Ooh, nailed it. This is where I get totally afraid of sounding like a total asshat. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, probably is a flavor of tannin. What's the most important thing? What are all the mistakes I might make? I need you to be my Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Perfect. A big mistake, especially that Americans make, is getting hung up on a variety. You know, when you say, "Oh, well, I don't like Merlot," like you're dumb, because if I put 10 wines in front of you and 5 of them are Merlot, I guarantee you couldn't tell me which 5 were Merlot. And
right.
I would encourage people to look at a region and find out things that they like about a region, and then learn how to taste wine, learn what they like and learn what they don't like. And then whenever you're tasting wine, it's important to understand that, like, you know, wine is an adventure, and you can travel to these different areas through a bottle. I mean, like, you can't go to a restaurant in, say, South America or South Africa, but you can get a bottle delivered to you, which is pretty awesome. If you go to a wine shop or go to a winery, like, we love wine and we love talking about it. So if you go to your local wine shop and say, "Hey, I'm looking for something interesting. This is what I think I like, but, like, could you taste me on something? Is there something that you really like and recommend?" And it's fun to just keep on trying. And even if a wine isn't like the exact one that you love, like, that's okay, because you're just getting an experience and you're experiencing that bottle in that region.
So is there a price range that wine is usually best in? Like, is there something we should avoid?
Sorry, I don't know what I can say. Full disclosure, this wine is $35 or $30. Yeah, on a restaurant menu, you'll probably find this at about 50, and it is delicious. And in my opinion, it's definitely worth more than that. However, I drink great wines at $20, at $15, at $80. I mean, like, I probably have, I don't know, 2,000, 3,000 bottles in my cellar, and I would bet that less than 3% are over $80. You don't necessarily have to spend a lot of money on wine. $30 is a lot of money to spend on wine.
Sure.
I mean, like, most of the wine in the world, 90% is under $20.
You touched on something that we've heard again and again and again, whether it's cigars or pipes or any kind of vice. People constantly are saying, just don't pretend to know things that you don't. Come with an open mind and say, "I like these, would you help me?" Man, will people fall all over themselves to give you advice and help and help
just
you.
ask questions. That's
Yeah.
the biggest thing. If somebody's going to tell you what they think, no matter what, they're trying to sell you something, right?
Sure. We found out that in the cigar world, the word is chooch, is how they refer to somebody who pretends to knowledge they don't have. Is there an equivalent in the wine world? Like, some chump comes in
Wine snob, maybe?
Douchebag.
That'll do.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. If you walk into a winery, do not say, "So do you guys, like, stomp the grapes like I Love Lucy?" Because it makes everybody want to throat punch you. Because the 52 other people that just walked in here said the exact same thing. And it's like you walk in and you have this, like, amazing epiphany. You're like, "I know what I'm going to ask him," right? Don't ask that. Don't bring up I Love Lucy.
Okay,
I don't
good.
want to talk about it. Like.
So in this case, we're beginning our wine tasting as good participants.
Sure.
What does etiquette dictate?
When you're pouring, only make sure you pour to the widest part of the glass. That's for a couple of different reasons, but that maximizes the surface area of the wine. And then nose it. Get your nose all the way in. Smell at the rim of your glass and at the middle part of your glass and even at the top part of your glass. So.
And it does matter to have your mouth open a little bit just to aerosolize?
No, so that's different in whiskey.
Okay.
Right? In wine, it's not as important. You can close your mouth, you can smell. And then I would recommend putting it on the table and then give it a good swirl. Only putting it on the table really helps, especially if you're a beginner, because you're very rarely going to screw it up.
Yeah, I was about to say, otherwise you look like your drunk uncle.
So what that did is expose more of the wine to oxygen. So come back, smell it again, and you're getting a whole different experience. The wine is opened up. The aromatics
really is
even more pronounced. And then when you taste the wine, I'd encourage you to, not take a huge sip, but take a significant sip, swirl it around your mouth. Pay attention to what it feels like on the sides of your palate, on the back. How long is the finish? Is it pleasant? Is the acidity stinging? Is it enjoyable? Think about the balance of the wine. That wine that we tasted earlier, it was very tannic up front. The balance was off, but it was very young. This wine is like a symphony that glows over your palate, and there's this long lingering finish that I find really appealing.
Is it an illusion that I'm selling myself that as I swish around, like I was feeling a literal texture with my tongue?
You absolutely are.
Okay. So
yeah, you're feeling tonicity, tannin, and acidity. You're also breathing in, you're also getting all those aromatics that are adding to your experience. Throw food in it. I mean, if you put a barbacoa taco with this, like, Jesus Christ will come down from the heavens and say, can I have a glass in the taco?
Wine pairings are a real thing, is what
absolutely.
we're saying. Yeah.
This wine is like medium tannin, and when you can get a little fat with this wine, i.e. like some creamier cheese, a little fattier meat, or even like a New York strip or some lamb, you're gonna get this symphony that happens on your palate that, like, it literally hits your brain and you just go, I don't know what happened, but something amazing. It's like sex, and you're like, endorphins hit, and you're like, I like this, and whatever it is, I want to keep doing it.
Some of my favorite experiences have absolutely been wine tasting with pairings.
Yeah.
Is some of the best times easily.
So if we're decoding secret code words, we've talked before about how dry is really secret code for not very sweet.
Yeah, or not sweet at all.
Not sweet at all.
It's bone dry, or there's no sugar in it. But when you're tasting this, there's a little bit of dryness on the front of your palate, right? That's the tannin.
And tannins, in my mind, I guess I have a half-written definition. For some reason, the word leathery pops into mind. I don't know if there's anything.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. Think about a popsicle stick that you're like putting to your tongue, like, oh, you know.
But it's a bitter thing.
It's cheek pull, absolutely, that bitterness.
It's actual molecules binding to your tongue. That's how you perceive that dryness.
So when I'm doing some wine tastings, I do the swirl and I look and I try to decide, like, am I supposed to comment on the legs or something?
No, you're not supposed to.
Good.
If one, and there's always one expert in your group, you know, or the guys that come up and they're like, oh, this wine has really nice legs, and that's code for, I know that you don't know what the hell you're talking about.
In the cigar world, they told us they get people who get them still in the wrapper and go, yeah, that's good.
It smells like plastic.
Perfect. Yeah, I got just a cigar for you. Legs is a real thing, right? But it doesn't tell you a wine's quality whatsoever. It tells you viscosity, and it's probably in some old movie or something that.
Maybe you can tell kind of an alcohol range. Maybe you can tell if it's more sweet from the legs, how quickly they run down. If they go more quickly, that's more alcohol. The fatter they are, the more sugar in the wine.
We're not going to make fun of you to your face. We're going to wait till you leave.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And then
See,
be like,
this is all the stuff I want to know. Like, what are the things you gossip about? So legs is definitely one of them. What are the other faux pas to avoid?
What about like the true chewing and the slurping like you're eating soup?
No, that's a real thing. We do that. I mean, they call it trilling. It's basically whistling backwards. You can put your head down and whistle backwards. And what that does is it pulls the aromatics over your sinus cavity, and really helps you get into the wine.
Retronasal, so you're trying to volatilize aroma molecules in the wine and get them back over your, sinuses you get a little bit more of a smell and a little bit more of a nose.
Would it be a fair parallel to say, like, whiskey has no trouble doing that on its own? All you got to do is...
the alcohol is so high.
Exactly. Yeah. Whereas this, maybe you got to goose it with a little bit of
You got to get oxygen in there.
Yeah.
It's okay to be dumb, like to not know, right? Mm-hmm. And this part of the journey, and one of the best times I have with my wife is we started this wine journey many years ago, and I'm still learning so much. So I would encourage your people, there's no stupid questions. We're really not going to make fun of you if you say the word legs, and I would encourage your viewers out there to talk about what they're tasting, what they're feeling, and encourage you to deep dive. A lot of people say, oh, this wine's really smooth. Well, really, what does that mean? And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just is smooth, it's got a smooth finish, it's got a smooth texture, smooth meaning it's sweet, or it's got a lot of oak. There's smooth can mean a lot of different things. So as your viewers go through and taste wine with each other, deep dive and be like, what do you mean by that? And there's no wrong answers, because your plum might be my pomegranate.
That's one of my favorite things our friend Daniel Whittington says is the words don't matter. What matters is you're erecting a set of signposts. For example, I could never identify the flavor of rye until somebody said the word dill. And I'm like, oh my God, yes, rye. To me, it smells like dillweed or whatever. And all of a sudden, I had that signpost that I didn't have before, even if that's not what somebody else gets out of it. It's like Absolutely. It means rye to me now.
Now, what about tasting orders? Should you start with red, start with white, start with sweet, start with dry?
In that case, and I think Tony would agree with me, we'll always start with more acidity white wines generally, or rosés, and then go into more lighter and medium-bodied tannin red wines, and then finish with the more tannic red wines, i.e., start with Sauvignon Blanc, then go to Pinot Noir, then go to Merlot, then go to maybe Cabernet or Cabernet Franc, and then finish with the dessert wine.
You mentioned something about wines from different regions, and I always thought that I was just cheaping out because for whatever reason, I know that in general, a red from Argentina tends to be what I like, and I don't have words for what I like.
So I just like cheap wine.
Yes, but most importantly, it's never too sweet. I really have an aversion to wines that are too sweet.
Most Argentinian wine is, say, Malbec, or some version of Malbec, and Malbec is a very less tannic grape. So what you're probably getting, and most of those wines aren't sweet, but they're fruit forward. Just like this wine is very fruit forward, right? But it's totally dry. It's not sweet at all.
When you say fruit forward, that means like that initial splash, you get one impression, and then after you swallow, you get the afterglow that's fairly different.
Yeah, and you're not getting this lingering tannin. If you drink like, say, Cabernet from Paso Robles, you're generally getting not very much sweetness in this big cheek pull, this big tannin that's your overlooming effect as tonicity or this boldness. That Malbec is more fruit, it's more blue fruit. It's a little bit brighter, and it's a little bit, I would say, almost easier to drink, and that's not a bad thing.
Approachable earlier in its life.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it, for sure. And again, like, I will say, like, I started wine drinking in college, and I drank a ton of Argentinian and Chilean Malbec, and it was affordable, and it was a great way to start. Argentina and Chile makes still some great wine. I'm not like saying that they don't, but the bulk of what they do for me now is a little like less interesting. Like it's just I graduated, right, or just evolved.
How important is it? Let's say you're going to a party and you're going to show up with a bottle of wine. Is it okay to just show up with a bottle of wine, or should everybody show up with a bottle of wine and the story behind it?
The story is so important, man. It's so important because it makes wine more fun. Just like if you go buy a steak at a store, is it better to know the farmer and know where your food came from? Like, I think in the end, drinking wine and eating food is so much about slowing down and enjoying life. I mean, like just what we're doing now, we're having a conversation around wine and about the people that grew it and about how to taste it. And wine for me is that. If we can just slow down and not talk about like what you have or what I have and all that other good stuff, and just share the story of the farmer a little bit more, and then ask questions about each other. And
it's almost as though, like, depending on what kind of party you're going to, you would do yourself a service to approach not with I like this color or this vintage or this location. Instead, let me tell you about the person who's throwing this party, and then have the sommelier say, well, here's a very good story that will match. This is the MacGuffin that allows you to talk about the thing that you suspect they would care about. Is that too pretentious to say?
No, not at all. It's not pretentious, because if you really care, and if you're like, I would encourage people to think about it like, hey, I don't want to tell you this story because I want you to think I'm cool. It's more like, I want to tell you this story because I think it's really badass and I want to share it with you, and it's going to make our experience drinking this wine so much better.
Yeah, and I suppose also, like many other things, they call it the Texas sharpshooter fallacy, where you shoot the side of the barn first, then you paint a target. Like, the wine doesn't even have to be good necessarily, whatever objective standards there are, so much as, hey, I have no idea if this wine is gonna be great or not, but here's the story I know about it.
Yeah.
Now you've created an experience, an adventure that all of you are going together on.
Absolutely, man. It's an adventure. And that's what's so cool about wine, is you can taste it from all these different areas and different vintages. And I mean, even within the William Chris Vineyards portfolio, you can try wine from the coolest parts in Texas, from some of the best farmers in the state of Texas that are doing an incredible job, from the best winemakers in Texas. Go with those adventures. Taste all those different areas.
Speaking of which, you guys are having adventures every single week. You're doing virtual wine tastings?
Virtual wine tastings on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. You can definitely come out to the Hill Country. We ship to 45 different states, I believe. So if you're interested, please buy our wine online. But the virtual tasting is a great way to get to know our winery.
Feel like we only barely scratched the surface. We've got a long way to go.
We got a lot more drinking to do.
Oh yeah, no, thank you very much, gentlemen.
Cheers,
that was amazing.
guys.
Well done.
Awesome.
Does anybody like get excited about talking about ED? Like they're all like, oh my God, you know what I can't wait to do is have this awkward conversation with my health person?
Oh, you know how much I love awkward conversations.
Well, I'm about to find out. But the beautiful thing about Roman is that they make it super easy. All you have to do is you do everything online, right?
Yes, you do not have to have any of those things where you explain to the receptionist, and then you explain to the nurse, and then you explain to the doctor. And by the time you're done talking about this very personal thing, the entire medical industry knows about your difficulties.
It's so funny because like when it's time for intimate sessions with your loved one, like that's your one person drama. It's like it's gig time. You want to bring the best that you got, and then you get older and things get a little more complicated. And it's like, oh, if only there was like a simple pill to make all of this. There is.
There are so many reasons that you might be having difficulty, but it doesn't matter because if you go to getroman.com/rogue, you can get a free online visit.
Yep.
An actual healthcare professional will determine if real medicine,
None of that gas station garbage.
Yeah.
Here's the important part. If you want to get back to the business of getting down to business, you got to head on over to getroman.com/rogue.
You'll get $15 off your first order, free 2-day shipping, and a free online consultation.
Yeah, because it's business time. And business is good.
Offer and link in the description below.
Think about tanning like a tea bag after. Think about a tea bag.
I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Why did you touch him after that? That's so weird.
Because he was giggling already.